Hey guys, Johnna Devereaux here with Bow Wow Labs. We have a really exciting show today. I'm going to be talking with Robin Bennett. She's been in the industry for over 20 plus years. She's a certified professional dog trainer, author, consultant. She helps facilities that offer daycare and also dog training. And she is the founder of All About Dogs, the largest dog training facility in Virginia. And she's going to be here today to join us and talk about all things training, what dogs should be trained, types of classes they should be joining, questions you should be asking people or trainers if you're looking to hire and work with a trainer, and also a really good question of what do you do if the trainer isn't working for you? So we're just waiting for her. Hi, Candidly. How are you? Thank you guys for joining us. We're just waiting for Robin Bennett to sign in, and then we're going to take some questions if you have any and talk about all things dog training. So thanks for joining us. Robin, whenever you're ready, please just come on in. Hey, Keith, thanks for joining. Hey, Bacon the Bully. Just waiting for Robin Bennett. She is a phenomenal, nationally renowned dog trainer, and she's going to be joining us today to talk about it. Hey, Robin, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for taking time out of your day today to talk with us. Hey, Snooky. We have a lot of people that have joined in, and I'm really excited to talk about dog training. I think, everyone that has a dog should be involved in dog training, right?
Yeah.
At all stages of life. So we actually had a quick question come in. Specifically, Candidly asked, so I hate to do questions right at the beginning, but I'm going to because it's a really good one. She said, how do you have a dog not react with wanting play with other dogs while on a walk? They live in New York City, and the Cavalier that they have always wants to play with dogs when it should be focusing on walking. I think that's a pretty common question that happens a lot for people.
Actually, the hard part is you have to be more interesting to your dog than the other dog is. So I do a lot when my dog was a puppy, especially. I did a lot where I would reward my dog for looking at me when there were other animals present. And I take chicken or steak and show him that. And all of a sudden, he doesn't care about the other dog. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of giving him an alternative behavior instead of just wanting to go play.
And if you have a dog or a puppy that's extremely food motivated, having a high value treat is obviously going to be essential. But if you have one that isn't food motivated, and say they don't have motivation for toys even, what would you recommend in a situation like that? How do you become more fun than the dog?
Yeah, a lot of times with the food, it is a matter of finding what the dog really, really likes. And I find that really high value treats like chicken or steak or cheese, even a non-motivated food dog will like that. But if that's really is a problem, then I would look at distance as your friend. So moving away in the initial training phases so that you can succeed, because you want to make sure the dog is able to succeed, meaning it can pay attention to you. And sometimes that means you have to build some distance in and reinforce the dog for looking at you or playing with you or whatever, while that other dog is walking by. And that can take a little bit of practice.
Yeah. And I think, that it does take a lot of practice because, you're trying to retrain what they're naturally designed, how they're to think and respond, right? But I think another great thing to add in would be impulse control, because that would be something that you can do at home. And I'm sure that if a dog is not having that control on a walk, there's probably some other areas where there is lack of impulse control as well. So those are some fun things. So
yeah,
on that note,
and I'm going to throw in one more thing real quick, and that is making sure that you're not letting that behavior get reinforced sometimes. Because a lot of times I find people are like, well, let me just walk faster so he can get up there and play with that other dog. And then that actually is teaching the dog, act like a lunatic. And then I get to meet this other dog I want. So I love the impulse control training, because you could actually teach the dog, you can go greet that other dog, but you have to be calm first, and you have to sit first, or you have to look at me first, or whatever. So impulse control exercises are always a good thing to practice.
Yeah, we do that on a daily basis at my house. My little girl, who needs proximity from other dogs, because she's the same thing. So practicing proximity, like you said, that distance is a great thing to add in. So on that note, I always get this question a lot because I also happen to have a pet store, and so people come in that have dogs that are, they're about to be new parents to puppies, or they have dogs that are like 10 or 12. Is there ever a time when a dog can't be trained?
No, they're real. That sort of I can't teach an old dog new tricks is a myth. You can teach dogs anything. Now, I will say if you're trying to change a habit that has existed for years, it's going to take a little bit more time, a little bit more patience, but absolutely dogs can be trained at any age.
That's awesome. And so with puppies, when do you recommend they begin training? And I know there's a big debate that I don't really want to get into between trainers saying start as soon as possible and vets saying wait until they have, their first round of shots. I think there's a happy medium, right? Where you can still be training without necessarily having your puppy be in the nose of other dogs or in the poop of other dogs, right? Can you talk to us a
Exactly.
little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a saying that whenever you and your dog are together, one of you is training the other. So we would like that to be you training the dog, but very often the dog is doing a great job of training the humans. But you can train dogs are able to learn as soon as they're born. I mean, they're learning all the time. So as soon as you bring that puppy home, I would start training them. Now I would be training, in very short sessions. Like a puppy's attention span is very, very short, but throughout the day, you're getting ready to feed them, teach them to sit down before you put the food bowl down, or you're going to go outside with him, teach him that he needs to potty outside. Obviously you're going to do house training right away, and that's
Right.
something you're teaching the dog. You can even teach them to sit politely for petting at an early age. So you can start training them, and I would start training them as soon as you bring them home, because they're learning something. You might as
Right.
well have them learn what you want them to learn. And I do agree you shouldn't take them out to a dog park or something like that when they haven't had all their vaccinations, but you can definitely do a ton of stuff around the house. And even starting some of those impulse control exercises, you can begin right away as soon as that puppy comes home.
Yeah. And, I think it's important that people realize that you can still socialize your puppies without having them be playing with other puppies when they're not properly vaccinated. When I rescued my little girl, she was really young. And so there was like a list of 100 things that you can do. And the things that you don't even think about, like bringing your puppy near someone that's riding a bike, someone that has a backpack on, someone that's wearing sunglasses, someone that has a hat on, sunglasses, and a backpack on, right? Near motorcycles, all these things that you can do to just
Exactly.
expand them. That's not necessarily training per se. It's more a desensitization, but I think it goes hand in hand with training.
Absolutely. And socialization, honestly, socialization with other dogs. And I actually make a living helping people understand how to do off-leash play. So I'm going to say that despite that, that is one of the main things I do for a living. Socialization with other dogs is my least of my worries with a puppy. Like, you need to socialize them with the world in general, and he's going to see far more people of all ages, from kids and infants to adults and elderly, more than he's going to see a bunch of dogs. So I would be focusing on getting him all that socialization and really teaching him that the world is a great place and it's a lot of fun and there's all kinds of novel things out there, but let's introduce him to as many as possible. And he doesn't really need to meet dogs right now anyway. So
Right.
focus on the people. You really want to teach them how to communicate between a human and the dog, because he already knows how to communicate with his own species. So I really like focusing
Very
on
good
the
point.
people part of things.
So on that note, if you have a puppy that for some odd reason, isn't listening to you, isn't responding to you, and I seem to think that if that's happening, then you both need some training, right? How would you recommend people go about finding a trainer? I know, just picking one out of a phone book isn't necessarily the right way to do it. Like, what questions would you recommend that people ask to make certain that it's a good fit?
Oh, that's such a great question, because you really do want a trainer that aligns with all of your beliefs and is going to do, well by what you want for your dog. So I would be looking at, first of all, I would look at some websites, and if possible, now that COVID's starting to open things up, go and actually watch a class without your puppy, just go observe. I'd be really looking for what kind of education and credentials does that trainer have? Did they just open their doors because they love dogs and they've decided to train, or have they been doing it for a while, and do they have some experience? Do they attend classes or webinars or get continuing education? that would be one thing I would look at. The second thing, and probably one of the most important things, is just what methods are they using. I'm actually recommend positive reinforcement training. So I do look for trainers that are training with positive methods. And one of the biggest questions I would ask my instructor if I was going to take a class would be, what happens if my dog doesn't do what I've asked them to do? And you're going to hear a lot of different ideas on that. But I would be looking for someone that says, you know, probably we haven't done all of the practice that we need. And so we need to continue to work to set the dog up for success. We need to make sure that the dog actually understands. And there's some ways that we can make sure of that. And not someone that just necessarily says, oh, we're going to go right to let's punish the dog and reprimand him for doing it wrong. So I would be looking at that as well. And then obviously just someone that you enjoy working with, which is why I would go to a class and watch how the instructor actually teaches. Some of the greatest people that have really well-trained dogs, just because your dog is really well-trained doesn't mean you're a really good teacher of that. And so you want to make sure it's somebody that actually is good at explaining how the training works and helps you to succeed with your dog, not just someone that, oh, I'll take your dog and I can do everything, and then hands them back to you. And you're like, how did you do that? They have to be able to teach you how to do it too. So you want to make sure of that as well.
Yeah. And I think, you know, one of the most important things you just said is that if a dog isn't responding, maybe it just needs a different trainer. Maybe it needs a different approach. You know, one of the best things that I was taught, because I have two dogs. And so I've been training them throughout my entire life, because I'm a big believer that even if your dog is trained, you still train them every single day, every single outing, every single experience. Right. You're still reinforcing a good behavior, or maybe, you know, correcting in a positive way to adjust the behavior, but that you must have fun. If you're not having fun when training your dog is not going to have fun, and they're not going to do what you ask. So it's really important, I think, that people always remember to have fun, because dogs have the mental capacity of like 3.5 to 4 years old. It's very limited, and they're not going to do it if it's not fun for them. Right?
Absolutely. I love that. And I think that is one of the things that we teach, is really learn a little bit about canine body language so that you understand what your dog looks like when your dog is happy. And I tell people, if you can just learn the cues that your dog is giving you, because your dog is talking to you all the time, just with canine body language. If you can understand that, that's the lens through everything. Like, is your dog happy when you're going to a picnic? And some dogs think that's great, and other dogs are like, I hate being here. Is your dog happy when they go to training class? You want to see them having fun, because you're right. If they're not having fun, then that's half the battle, is giving the dog a reason to have fun, because they're going to be much more enjoyable, and you'll have a much better relationship. But I think it's a lens to watch everything to see, is this the right thing for my dog? Whether it's training, going to an outing, going to the fireworks, going to whatever. Like, that's the lens to look through.
And there's different types of training classes, right? You have training where you're trying to teach them to sit, to stay, to wait. Then you have classes where you're doing, you know, tricks. Then you have classes where you're doing nose work. So to keep a variety of training classes, I think, is a good way to have like a broad experience, right? Of having fun with your dog and keeping it mixed up, so that they don't always think, oh, now we're going to this class. So I go through the routine of, I know I'm going to be asked to sit and then lay down. Like, you have to keep changing it up, right?
Absolutely. And you'll also find that some dogs, and a trainer will probably give you tips about this. Like, some dogs are really, really well suited to certain types of activities. So maybe your dog's not the greatest at nose work, but they're awesome at tricks, or vice versa. So it's a really fun way to find out. They're just, you know, it's like kids. Every kid, some are great with sports, some are great with music, some are, you know, great with a specific type of activity, and dogs are the same way. And I think it's really fun to find out like what your dog really shines at. And it's a joy. That's one of the biggest joys, is to see a dog that really, really is having fun doing whatever activity you've chosen to have them try to do.
And not only do they have fun, but when you are excited with them, they actually have a different stance, right? They have this sense of pride. I know I do nose walk with my dogs, and they like, when they get the scent, they're so proud of themselves, and it's just awesome to see. So one of our watchers, Snooky, talking about impulse control, they have a high prey drive dog. He says, my dog will chase a rabbit, deer, or squirrel, and typically they can get her to turn around but they want to improve it. So what would be some tips? I know you can't go into a full training session here, but what would be some quick tips, or where would you lead them to go look for more information?
So with a dog with a high prey drive, I would reward the dog by allowing them to have that prey drive, which obviously you can't always set up a rabbit out in your backyard. That would be awesome if you could, though, to do that safely. But what you can do is you can build a lot of impulse control exercises that end with the release of the dog chasing or running, or you throw something. And what you're basically building is a really strong stay where you're getting the dog psyched up. And you may have seen trainers that do like the 1, 2, 3 game where you get a dog to stay and then you're like, are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? And you finally count to 3 or give them whatever release command, and you actually encourage them to run and chase something, whether it's, you know, something that you can throw into the yard where they can chase it. But you're building up that stay at the beginning, and the reward is, I'm going to get to go chase it. Now, in real life, you're probably not going to always let them go chase a rabbit or whatever, but you're going to build onto that to where the dog says, the sooner I sit, the sooner I might be able to go chase that. And then you can work up to where you get them to stay while you actually throw the object, and they have to stay even while it's flying through the air. So I think dogs that have a prey drive, you can really, really work on that by doing those impulse control. And that sounds like what you're doing, which is great.
Yeah, that's awesome. So here's a good question. I think it's a good question, at least. How do you know if the trainer you're working with isn't right for your dog, if it's just not a good fit for your dog?
Well, I would say 2 things. One is I would watch your dog's body language. Again, if your dog gets to any place, like, okay, I'm going to use veterinarians because most dogs don't have a great time at the veterinarian's office. And if you've taken them there for a few times, you'll see that body language of the dog going, oh no, we're at this place. Now, I countered that because when my dog was a puppy, I used to take him to the vets and just play in the parking lot, play in the office. My dog loved going to the vet because he went there so many times and just had fun. But that's the body language. If you get to your training class and your dog is, you know, ears back, tail down, I don't really want to go in this room, that would be one sign that he's just not having fun there. The other is he improving? Are you learning anything yourself? Do you and your dog learn together? And you want to, if you are learning together, your relationship's going to get stronger. But if you're feeling like my relationship with my dog is more frustrating than ever, it's not working, then possibly you need a change of training advice to see if you can improve that, because you both should be having fun while you're there. So if the trainer just rubs you the wrong way, then maybe just personally it's not a good fit.
That's an interesting point, because I would love your opinion about those trainers that do like board and trains where they take your dog for several weeks. I've always thought, like you just mentioned, that the pet parent should be a large player in the training schedule. But I know there are some dogs that sometimes the pet parent is holding them back. And so sometimes they need to have that separation in order to really learn. And then it becomes, now you're teaching the pet parent, right?
Right.
What are your feelings on those types of situations? Do you think it's like the first place you should go, the last place?
I honestly, it does come down to personal preference and whether or not the trainer is the right fit for your particular dog. And I would still be looking for a positive trainer and all of that. The advantage to doing the training together is you are learning and the dog is learning. So you're actually learning and hopefully can apply that education into future scenarios. So you are gaining a ton of knowledge that's really valuable. That being said, the downside is because there's now 2 animals learning, you and the dog, it can sometimes take longer because you're both sort of stumbling through the learning phase. When you have a trainer do it, for instance, at a board and train, the trainer already knows what they're doing. So there's only one animal learning in that situation. So you can speed up the training process. But that being said, you're not going to get Lassie back. I mean, you're going to get a dog that has some training, but dogs are also smart enough to work for wherever there's consistency and repetition. So if you get the dog back and you don't reinforce everything, kind of to what you were saying earlier, you still have to practice with the dog. That training isn't going to go anywhere. So you still are going to have that learning curve. It's just sometimes you can kickstart the training, and then when you get the dog back, you can pick up from that training and not be as frustrated. So there is sometimes an advantage to doing it. A lot of times I find people send the dog to a training program because they don't have the time to train. And that could be a valid reason. But again, you're going to still have to find time to train when you get the dog back. And your dog's not going to be 100% perfect. Like I said, I think a lot of people have the misconception of we're going to send the dog back, get back Lassie, and, our life will be great. And it doesn't quite work that way.
I think that's such a valuable thing that you just said, because so many people, whether they're taking part with the training or if they're sending their dog away to like a board and train and waiting for their dog to come back, they are animals, and we're asking them to do things that maybe is not necessarily instinctual for what they are, right? For their species. Exactly. So we need to have patience. And that's something I think that is so crucial. Patience is a big part on behalf of the pet parent, because dogs don't know what they're asking them. We have to speak a different language, right?
Right.
And work in a way that they understand, but they're really smart at the same time. So I don't want to take away from that. So that's something that, what else can, if you have little kids at home and you just are bringing home a puppy, or if you have, an older dog, how can you get the entire family in on the training aspect of it? Or do you recommend that while you're training, only one person focuses on the training, and then once you've solidified that relationship, then you have every other family member get involved?
I actually recommend the whole family does get involved. And honestly, I would obviously recommend be as consistent as possible. It's just not going to totally work, especially if you have kids of different ages and then you've got adults. I mean, I will say one human being isn't necessarily always consistent, let alone consistency among 4 or 5 people that might be in a family. But the good thing about it is dogs will end up kind of adjusting to whoever's working with him. That could be good and bad. I mean, you can have a dog that works beautifully with one person in the family and then completely ignores someone else because that other person is never following through or never consistent. So it's just really a matter of getting the family together to say, okay, here's the words we're going to use as our cues. That would be the first thing. And then really trying to encourage everybody to be consistent as possible. But it's not going to be perfect, but it'll still work. Dogs, the amazing thing is dogs learn despite our inconsistency sometimes. But then I do think there's a huge room for management, especially if you have an infant, that obviously can't do anything with a dog. Then it becomes a matter of managing the environment to make sure that that relationship is still really good. And even things like we use, crates for house training, that's a type of management. It's the same thing. If your dog's constantly going up and grabbing things off of the counter, then obviously we want to teach them not to do that, but we also can manage the environment by not leaving food out or pushing it back far enough that the dog can't get it or whatever. So I think management comes into play as well in terms of training the dog and working with an environment where things might not be 100% consistent all the time.
Yeah, I love that. So getting a list of cues that everyone in the household understands is what you're using. So if you're teaching the dog to lie down, say down, and if they're jumping up on you, if your word is off, use off, not down, right? Because
exactly.
You don't want to confuse the animals. I think that's a really important point. And yeah, it's really just setting the dog up for success, because when you set the dog up for success, then everyone wins. And that's what is so important at the end of the day. So we've taken a lot of your time. I really appreciate it. Is there anything else that you think, you've been doing this for 20 years. What's some information that I might not have asked you about that everyone should know? And how can they find you?
I think, honestly, the biggest thing is if you understand how dogs learn, which is if the dog, and this is all animals, not just dogs, but if a dog does something, any behavior at all, and it's followed by something the dog likes, they're going to keep doing that behavior. That's the basis of training. So that works with good behaviors and bad behaviors. So if we can just understand and get your family to understand, if your dog jumps on you and your dog loves being petted and you pet them, you're rewarding the jumping. So even if you can just recognize where you might accidentally be rewarding the dog, that goes a long way to saying, okay, now we need to stop that particular behavior on our part. Same thing with a dog. The common one I see is the dog that scratches at the door to get outside. And then as owners of that house, we go, oh my gosh, I don't want him to scratch at the door. So we open the door really quickly. You've just actually rewarded the dog for scratching on the door. So if you could just learn that and kind of recognize any behavior that's happening over and over that you're like, I hate that he keeps doing this. look for how the reinforcement is happening, because I can
Well,
guarantee you somehow they're getting reinforced for it.
and to that point, the dogs that are really nervous and have separation anxiety, the pet parents, I see this all the time. They get down on the ground and they start petting the animal. I'm like, no, 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 no. You're reinforcing their fear. Like, you need to let them be more confident. It's so important, I think, that we identify our role in what their actions are.
Right, exactly.
That's awesome.
And so people can find me at my website, which is thedoggurus.com. And we do a lot with pet care businesses to help train their staff and help people who have pet care businesses. And then we also have information on there for pet parents as well. So definitely check us out there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And it's been a pleasure, Robin. Thank you.
Thanks. It was great being here. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.